All right, so it's November 12th, 2018, 4:24 p.m. on the East Coast as I record this video. I just woke up. I had gone to sleep after going to take care of something in my real life. I had to go make a big purchase and for something, and I come home and I go to sleep and I wake up and I get a text message, Stan Lee is dead. It's like one of those things where you knew the day would come and you knew it wasn't that far away, because Stan Lee was old. There were rumors that he was sick. There were reports that he was sick. But he somehow always pulled through. He somehow always made it through. And then I found out that he was dead. You know, a lot of different messages from different people and different social media platforms about the death of Stan Lee. And I wanted to give my thoughts on Stan Lee and what he means to me and what he meant as a creator. Now, obviously Stan Lee, I never met the guy, but I had a chance to at MegaCon Orlando in 2016. And what did I do? I did the classic, oh, his line's too long, he's too expensive, I'll get him next time. Next time he comes, I will go and take a picture with him. Well, I never got to do that, even to this day. You know, Marvel is really hot. Marvel is probably the hottest it's ever been right now in 2018. The comics is one thing, but the overall Marvel property, we're talking about the video games, we're talking about even Sony and what they're doing with all these movies coming out, like Into the Spider-Verse, the PS4 Spider-Man game. Of course, the MCU is red hot, made more money than it's ever made before, and it's always been profitable. And none of this would be possible if it wasn't for Stan Lee. Stan Lee's creativity and his ability to create characters that literally are iconic. I mean, how many people in this world can say they created this many iconic characters? Incredible Hulk, Iron Man, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man. Legends. Characters that have been adapted into so many different TV shows, video games, and movies that we have looked up to and that we have related to for decades. Who can say they created this many iconic characters? I mean, like what? Walt Disney, maybe? Like, how many can say that? And the thing about these characters is, because of these characters being created and because of the explosion that Marvel had and still has when you think about it, a lot of people have jobs because of Stan Lee. Think about this. I want you to think about this. Think about every person who's ever worked on an MCU movie or on a comic book adaptation based on the Marvel Comics. Blade, X-Men, even the stuff that came out before the MCU. Every person who got hired to construct some kind of set. Every person who got hired to, help out around the set. Lighting people, rigging people, editors, even people who work in the offices cleaning. It's a high probability that those people would not have jobs in that industry had it not been for Stan Lee and these characters that people paid money to go see in movie theaters. Stan Lee created millions of jobs for people. Think about that. And that's the thing that I think people have to remember, is that when we mourn the loss of Stan Lee, it's not that we're mourning the loss of a guy who's just a guy who made cool characters and told cool stories. It's the loss of a guy who reinvented the entire business. A guy who put food on the plate for all of us to eat. And, I was very mad when I got the news. I actually went off on another YouTuber. I snapped at him when I should have just talked to him calmly. This morning. I do regret it. I shouldn't have done that, but I was mad. I mean, I was angry. I apologized to him privately. But, I was very upset because this passing really did hit me. And the thing is, whenever somebody who is elderly passes away, I always try to say to myself, well, you know what? At least they lived a full life. And when it comes to Stan Lee, he definitely did. Just read up on him. The dude was incredibly wealthy. The dude had a lot of good things that many of us may never have. And that's good. He earned it. I mean, he worked for it. But it's like, even though he was elderly and he lived a full life, it's still a tragedy. A lot of it has to do with the fact that I never got to meet him myself. You know, I just got done playing Spider-Man PS4 on my Twitch channel, and there's a really cool Easter egg in that game, early in that game, featuring Stan Lee. I'm not going to spoil what it is, but it's cool. And every MCU movie that we have seen has had a Stan Lee cameo. Not just MCU films, but also the ones that have Marvel characters like Venom and the other Spider-Man movies. Stan Lee has always been around. He's always looked healthy. My early memories of Stan Lee is when I was a kid, I watched this thing called the Marvel Magic Hour. And if you're a kid like from the 90s, or maybe you are from the 80s and you remember this, you know the Marvel Magic Hour was supposed to be, I believe, Iron Man and Fantastic Four, or maybe Iron Man and Hulk. It's been a long time. But basically, Stan Lee was the host. No, it was Fantastic Four. And he was the host. And he would always get on there with the, you know, calling us true believers. And, you know, and then there's also that really funny Simpsons episode with Stan Lee where Homer Simpson gets covered in the green paint or whatever it was. I haven't seen that episode in years, but I remember it being really funny. And this is during a time when The Simpsons was not that great. You know, Stan Lee, he's just a legitimate, iconic creator. When it comes to being a creator, he's pretty damn iconic. And even though he's gone, he left behind a treasure trove of stories. And a lot of them are very simple. What I love about Stan Lee's era in Marvel is that he would do a lot of very subtle sort of reflections of the real world. With the X-Men, the Civil Rights Movement. That's a big one. Peter Parker, right? The crime in New York and how he was negligent and it wound up costing him his uncle's life, and that's what motivated him to being a superhero. It's a great story. That is a great origin story. The Spider-Man origin story is great. Amazing Fantasy number 15. And, you know, a lot of those old stories were pretty simple. I mean, just the early Fantastic Four stories with Doctor Doom and the Collector later on and all these things that would happen. And there's a bunch of villains. I'm not going to get into everything, but, you know, as a kid, I remember collecting the Marvel comic trading cards. I didn't have comic books when I first got into Marvel. This was later. I read a couple, but I didn't have any. But in the I would collect trading cards, and that's how I learned about all these characters. Even the ones that are sort of obscure, even though they're not to comic book fans, but the ones that aren't mainstream, like Moon Knight. You know, the original Guardians of the Galaxy. Not the ones in the movie now. The original Guardians of the Galaxy. So Stan Lee's passing is going to be one that I think we're going to remember for... Well, Stan Lee's life is going to be one that we're going to remember for a long time. And one that really, because of how big the Marvel movies are, and how big the Marvel... Everything Marvel is, these characters, I feel like his legacy is forever etched in the annals of time. Forever. These movies have broken records. These movies have inspired an entire generation. These comic books, these stories, have inspired so many. And it's just a huge bummer. It's a loss that I think I was kind of fearing it, but I knew it would happen at some point. And it's just one that really sucks. And I hope that, and I know, not I hope, I know he'll be remembered. Everybody knows he'll be remembered. So at least there's that. Leave a comment about your favorite Stan Lee memories. That's really all I have for you. I will talk to you later.